So welcome everyone to our webinar on fundraising in the era of AI. It is very good to have you all here with us today. So unlike our previous webinars on AI, today we are zeroing in on fundraising specifically, which is going to be great. If you're new to our webinars, I'm Lisa, I'm Head of Marketing at Torchbox, and we're a digital agency focused on positive change. And we're actually hosting this webinar today following a workshop that we hosted for Oxfam's global fundraising team. And we thought it would be good to bring it to a wider audience. But if following the webinar, you feel like a more in-depth workshop might be useful, then let me know. So today we will explore current trends in AI, its impact on future donor relationships, and the emerging channels AI is unlocking for fundraisers. And your speakers for today are Ed Baldry, our Director of Innovation, and me. You've got me as a presenter today because unfortunately, Suzanne, who was advertised, can't make the webinar, so I am honoured to be her understudy. Thank you to everybody that completed our pre-webinar survey. The biggest challenges that came out of it in fundraising that were identified include managing and utilising large amounts of data effectively and competing for donor attention in a noisy landscape. And when it comes to AI solutions, many of you believe that AI can significantly help with donor behaviour analysis and targeting, and also personalised communications and engagement. And your main concerns are on over-reliance on AI, leading to a lack of personal touch and potential misinformation and bias. So thank you, because it was really useful to get all of that feedback. So we've made sure that we've covered all of those points in the webinar today, and we'll be keen to hear any other questions that you have. Because it's a webinar, it would be really useful if you can use the Q&A facility for your questions. It actually really helps, especially because it's just me and Ed today, to keep track of any that we've answered or any that we've missed as well. So you should be able to find that in the Zoom navigation panel. And I will share an email after with the recording and any of the resources that we mention as well. And so I will now hand over to Ed.
Amazing, thanks Lisa. Let me share the screen. Hopefully that is sharing, right? Good stuff, good stuff. Great, lovely to have everybody here. Very excited for the webinar. Very excited to be co-hosting with Lisa as well. And to just reiterate even what Lisa said, it was great to get those responses to the survey so that we could think about how to best craft and tailor this for everybody. So we've got 3 sections today that we'll be going through in about 35 minutes. It's where we are in the world, so state of fundraising, state of AI, and then the signals that we're seeing combining those 2 things. The good things about combining AI with fundraising, and then some of the less good things that we will be digging into. But to start with, I'm going to hand back across to Lisa, who can take us through some of the state of the fundraising.
Yeah, so if we jump in, looking at the state of fundraising, some of the challenges that we hear a lot from fundraisers include the high complexity you're facing, especially with an increasingly fragmented media landscape. So audiences are spread out across so many channels now that it makes it really challenging for fundraisers to reach a broad audience, and that it's even harder to compete for attention because the competition is coming from both inside and outside the sector. And there's also a fear of missing out on potential donations because your efforts are not fully optimized. Charity fundraising is expensive and it's time consuming, and optimizing performance is really important. But when we're in a constant state of flux with culture and technology changing all of the time, it can be very difficult. From conversations that we've had with fundraisers, we have been able to draw out 5 priority areas. So number 1 is targets. And as the quote says here, we have ambitious growth targets. We need to create more opportunities to cross-sell and upsell fundraising products. Organizations need to find ways to offer products and also encouraging donors to upgrade their contributions. Number 2 is targeting high-value donors. We need more detailed segmentation so we can target high-value supporters, decrease acquisition costs, and increase retention rates. The third one is the need to optimize for donations. Again, taking a quote from our conversations, what drives and hinders conversions on our website? I want website data to give more insight about supporters' propensity to give. It's really crucial to understand what motivates people to donate, but also what obstacles might be preventing them from donating on your website. And number 4 is the need for a complete customer view. We need more collaboration and integration between CRM data and website analytics to understand where our marketing efforts are most effective. So to begin to achieve this, we've really got to break down silos and between different data sources to understand who your supporters are and how they're engaging with your content, and also to see which marketing strategies are really working to drive impact. And finally, number 5 is all about impact and transparency, particularly from a donor perspective. For me, the most important thing is transparency. There's nothing worse than people giving their hard-earned cash only for it not to go where you think it's going to go. So donors want to know exactly where the contributions are being used and the tangible impact they're making. So how is AI going to change this situation? Is it actually going to make our lives any easier or harder? That is why we are all here today. So I'm going to hand over to Ed to quickly do a recap on the state of AI.
Amazing. And I'm going to quickly unmute myself. When I've done this, there's some noisy building outside, which hopefully no one else is being subjected to. Amazing. Artificial intelligence then, and this will be familiar to anyone who has joined webinars in the past here at Torchbox, but we think it's useful to do a quick recap. Artificial intelligence is a tapestry of technologies going from computer vision to foundation models. And they've all got slightly different jobs to do. And this has meant that we've spawned a huge number of companies and tools that we can be working with. So I'm not expecting you to be able to see any of the logos on here, but it just gives a sense of how vast this frontier is that we're working in. The landscape is shifting all the time with new tools and new processes coming on stream. And there are, broadly speaking, 2 varieties of AI at the moment. It's being slightly reductive, but hopefully in a useful way. On one side, you've got the deterministic models. So the old school way that we think about computers giving 2 plus 2, taking as an input 2 plus 2 and always giving us 4. On the other side, we've got these non-deterministic or probabilistic models. So generative AI, right? ChatGPT, etc., where 2 plus 2 is more likely to be 4, but it could be 5, 7, or 9, or whatever. It would depend on the context of the data set and the context in which the model finds itself, which is really useful if you're wanting to do some creative tasks. Now, AI is impacting every system in society at the moment. Caspar Benjamin Reimer Borkskopf, who has a great name, he is a systems thinker, and he has made the argument that modern human society can be divided into 12 systems. So food and agriculture, politics, the legal system, cultural affairs, healthcare, etc. And if we use those 12 categories and start mapping the impact that AI is having, we can see that it's already starting to have outsized effects on all of these different networks that we have within our lives. Now, out of scope for this webinar to be talking about why you need to adapt a strategy for this. If you're interested, we did a webinar back in February or March looking at this. February, it says on the slide. Back in February, we'll share the link out afterwards because you might find that useful for a broader view. But this is important, right? From a fundraising perspective, 78% of funders and 77% of nonprofits believe their organization would benefit from using more AI. This is coming from Stanford University, their human-centered artificial intelligence team. There are also some risks, though. It'd be remiss to do a webinar about AI and not flag that there are still problems with AI. And this is both generative AI and deterministic AI, right? So it's misinformation and bias. There's problems around data privacy and security. There's intellectual property and copyright concerns. There's obviously the environmental impacts, and there's over-reliance and lack of personal touch, right? What does it mean for us if, rather than talking to a colleague, we just go and ask the computer for the answer and never need to interact with others around us? And Google's recent AI overviews give a very public example of where this can go wrong. So one of the more hilarious of the errors was being told to put glue on your pizza if your cheese is slipping off. Slightly less hilarious ones is the fact that currently, if you ask it for any African country starting with K, it is unable to tell you about Kenya. It seems to have just edited out of its information, which is strange and indicative of the risk of AI as we move forwards. But cool. With that slightly negative framing, I'll try and hand back to Lisa, who can bring some positivity to this, talking about the signals and trends that we're seeing with AI and fundraising.
Thank you, Ed. So one of the most interesting things that we can see is how quickly some charities have already started adopting artificial intelligence. Organisations like Friends of the Earth and Parkinson's, Cancer Research UK, Charity Water and Breast Cancer Now are all using AI in some form, and this is a mix of generative and deterministic AI, but they're all doing fantastic things with these emerging technologies. We'll take a look at a couple of these in a bit more detail in a moment, but first of all, for a bit of context, we wanted to share some findings of a recent study done by the Charities Aid Foundation. They're the UK's biggest connector of donors and charities, and about 3 months ago, they released some fantastic research on what the public think of charities using AI. And they interviewed 6,000 people across 10 countries about their views on charities using AI. I will share a link to the full report in the follow-up email after. But the report showed that all donors were positive about using AI and showed that the more generous the donor, the more in favour of using AI they were. So this is quite reassuring. Age also wasn't a factor at all in the perception, so all groups have a net positive outlook. As part of the results, they calculated a net positivity score, which came out as about 15%. And that's good news if you want to use AI. Though, of course, there's always going to be a group of people who see the risks of AI being larger than any possible benefit. They also dug deeper into the specific opportunity categories. So fundamentally, the public want to know that the charity is not losing sight of the connection between the charity and the cause. That's why it's the most positive human benefits, so like helping people in disaster relief and making better decisions, that are the easiest for people to grasp and therefore the most supported. So this slide includes a donut chart showing public excitement and opportunities that AI presents. And the top 2 opportunities are faster disaster response with 28%, and number 2 is helping more people, 25%, and the other opportunities are making more informed decisions, being more efficient, managing volunteers better, measuring success, and personalising communications. But stepping away from CAF's research to our view here at Torchbox, we've started to see value for fundraisers in 10 areas, but to make them easier to remember, we've fit them into 3 tidy categories. So category 1 is taking care of the administrative or boring tasks. So it's handling all the routine parts of your job so that you can focus more on the creative and specialized tasks such as content ideation and creation, research synthesis, or grant writing. The second category is around better understanding your audience and tailoring to their needs. So that's behavior analysis, workflow efficiencies, predictive modeling, and social media monitoring. And a lot of this is going to be using deterministic AI and machine learning. So we need to be confident that 2 + 2 = 4 in this space, as Ed was saying earlier. And then category 3 is about data-driven decision-making and leveraging relationships. So impact measuring, adapting content to different audiences, and personalized comms and engagement. Now we can dig into those 3 categories a little bit more. I will hand over to Ed.
Amazing. Thanks, Lisa. Great. So first on the list, and perhaps my favorite, is the removal of boring work, right? It's getting over the blank page effect of starting a piece of work and enables me to actually get to the stuff where I can make a difference. Sometimes feels like 90% of our days are doing the undifferentiated stuff. I remember as a head of digital how little time I actually got to properly get deep into digital or better communicate our charity's message, and how much time was spent kind of on the admin tasks. And we've been working with lots of charities recently, and one of the things that we're often asked for are those quick wins, right? And the quick wins almost always are targeting those undifferentiated pieces of work. And there's two advantages here. First, it's low risk, and it is what the systems have been designed to solve, whether they're generative or deterministic AI. But second, and I think perhaps more important, it enables you to do the fun stuff, right? You don't want AI to be taking over the fun stuff. So get the AI to do the boring stuff. Again, in a sort of Blue Peter moment of one we did earlier, the last webinar we did was a real deep dive of how you as an individual could get the best out of the various tools, whether it's Claude, ChatGPT, or others that are on the market right now. So we'll share a link to that afterwards, and well worth a watch if you weren't able to join us that time. But the boring work happens at lots of levels within an organization, right? You've got the organizational, team, and individual levels. So I've got a few case studies to take us through folks that are working here. So given that I started talking at the individual level, let me jump into Just Giving, that is solving this for people who are trying to craft their story. Fundraisers who write their own stories on Just Giving raise 65% more for good causes. But unfortunately, there's quite a large number, about a third of people, who just opt for the default story. So Story Enhancer is helping them to get over that blank page problem. It helps those who are less confident writing to get a start. And it's a really interesting, very straightforward use of AI, and something that we're doing here as well at Torchbox. We've implemented something similar within Wagtail, our content management system. We've imaginatively called it Wagtail AI, but it can help content creators to get that helping hand to get started. The BBC has also been doing some very interesting work with content. So this is at a team level where they've been supporting their creators and their editors. The BBC is leveraging a combination of generative and deterministic AI to transform content between different media types. So that might be text to video or audio to text, or may mean translation or simplification of the content too. And it's a great way, in addition to helping the team, to enable them to better adapt their content to how different people are consuming media today. National Geographical Society are implementing AI in a non-obvious way to support their organizational needs. So they're using AI-powered image recognition, so computer vision, retrieval capabilities, to catalog their media assets, making it easier to search and retrieve images for use in fundraising campaigns and other outreach. And again, it's similar to some of the work that Torchbox did with the Tate galleries, where we also used computer vision to tag their images and make it easier for visitors to find artworks on their website. And another project that we worked on with RNIB, which was really great piece of work to be involved with, was supporting their helpline team. So they have a helpline where people are calling in, and RNIB have a huge amount of information, a real rich treasure trove of information to help people. But sometimes finding that information is a struggle. So what we did was we incorporated their knowledge base with a chat interface. It enables them to get a quick response so they can help the people that are giving them a call. Okay, let me hand back to Lisa, who can tell you about targeting users.
Thank you, Ed. So targeting and tailoring for individuals might be the most exciting part of what emerging technologies can offer for fundraisers, but it's equally important for potential donors as well. It will mean that donors will hear messaging that is relevant and tailored in a way that I actually find interesting. And that tailoring is really important. It's no good wasting money targeting folks if you're not actually giving them the information that they want or need. And unfortunately, it's hard to avoid technical details when talking about targeting and tailoring. Probabilistic models is a bit of a catch-all term to describe tools that can give some sort of prediction around future events. They are mostly all based on deterministic AI, though generative AI has made some of them more valuable. And they all have slightly scary names like probabilistic principal component analysis and latent Dirichlet allocation, which is a way of doing document clustering and topic discovery. But if we can strip away all of this complicated language, probabilistic models are actually reasonably straightforward. They are a way for us to create a theory about a future event based on historic observations. So if we start with an incredibly simple example, in this graph, the trend line, we can see there's a clear correlation between the number of incidents and number of snow days. That would allow us to create a probabilistic model about future events. Now, Ed promised me earlier that this wouldn't get too technical, so I am certainly not going to try and get into the weeds of how we balance multiple variables to arrive at an answer or anything like that. But we did want to mention that it's not magic. And whatever technique we use to forecast future events, whether that's anticipating an increase in donations or providing suggestions for donation strategies, our predictions aren't binary yes/no answers. This table is an example of a model output that shows how different variables are being weighed with a score at the end. It would depend on the project itself and the outcome that that particular project was looking for, but these particular figures indicate that anyone above 0.7 was placed in a group for one form of communication, and whilst those underneath 0.4 would be put into another group. And what this all means is that with good quality data, we can better understand donors. We can do this across multiple dimensions to build better pictures around propensity scores, so the likelihood that a donor will give to a cause, segmenting based on values and beliefs, and better understanding and leveraging channels, and understanding engagement patterns. And this also means that we can start to shift from large macro fundraising campaigns based on static demographic data to more micro campaigns that are personalised and targeted based on fluid data that is changing across multiple dimensions. So it's very exciting. And we've got some nice examples now as well. So Parkinson's UK increased revenue in an appeal by using AI-driven supporter predictions. In a pivot from the charity's existing propensity model, Parkinson's introduced AI donor predictive modelling capabilities, and they attracted 411 new gifts that otherwise would have been missed. They also worked with a data consultancy called Wood for Trees to use predictive modelling and donor segmentation, which helped to boost their cash giving by almost £500,000. When I share the deck, we'll include links to these case studies as well. Cure Alzheimer's Fund raised $1.2 million in donations using an AI-powered fundraising software called Gravity. Gravity will draft emails for you to existing donors based on their preferences and previous actions, and highlights donors who are on the cusp of lapsing. So the employees only needed to review the emails in the cultivation plan and then send them out the door. So Gravity isn't just about renewal letters, it's actually about helping fundraisers to continuously improve content and timing of messages, and it adds to their fundraising system all the time. And then finally, this isn't actually really a case study, it's a bit more to demonstrate how generative AI is being built into CRM. So most of the big players are now building AI integrations. This one's called Einstein GPT, and it's Salesforce AI. And this is an exciting development since it potentially makes the ability to predict future behaviours more accessible for charities. However, there is always the risk of not having data that can be easily navigated because it contains irrelevant, unusable, or confusing data. I will hand back to Ed to take us through data-driven decision-making and leveraging relationships.
Amazing, cool. Thanks, Lisa. Yes, this is all about how to, you found the human, how do you now create a relationship with them? How do you cultivate that? And this is all about meeting donors, supporters, advocates where they are. It means making their life easy if they want to give, making the process feel seamless, personalizing, demonstrating social proof, communicating urgency, and obviously communicating trust through visual identity. And by meeting donors where they are, we can increase the impact they deliver for charities and nonprofits. And I have 4 case studies that demonstrate this. First relates to data-driven decision-making. Charity Water are a great example here. They used AI to do multivariate testing on 1,000 variants of Facebook ads that they'd created. They looked at emotional sentiment, imagery, and narrative, and the approach let them pinpoint what was working and resulted in a 146% conversion rate uplift. And it's a great way to take a growth hacking approach using AI. Next is National Breast Cancer Foundation, who met their donors where they are using AI and SMS. I particularly like this case study because it uses SMS. It's a really smart move because it's an established technology that every phone has. It enforces simple messaging and is guaranteed to always reach the recipient. So the campaign activation resulted in a pretty staggering 1,400% return on investment, 58% increase in average dollars raised per fundraiser, and a 78% engagement rate. Another example of a chat interface comes from Extra Life. This was about making payment easy. They put AI into action to make their 24-hour fundraising marathon less resource intensive. Folks were asking similar questions about currency and accepted payment methods. Using a chatbot here had two advantages. It reduced the burden on the fundraising team whilst also giving potential donors immediate responses. It removed any barriers to them donating. Finally, Breast Cancer Now, one of our clients, personalized their content for their beneficiaries using generative AI. The Gallery of Hope exhibition was curated by world-renowned photographer Gillian Edelstein using her photography and AI. The gallery was filled with images of people living with breast cancer that they hope to see in the future. They were the images that people currently living with breast cancer hope to see in the future. And this was a combination of brand awareness with a very creative, emotive fundraising activation. Its bespoke activation exhibited at the National Portrait Gallery, whilst our digital marketing team supported with the online activation. So to recap where we've gotten so far, we think there are three categories that stand out for creating value when it comes to mixing AI and fundraising. First, reducing what we were calling boring work. Second, understanding and tailoring to your audience. And third, leveraging those audience relationships. Now, as with everything, we believe you should start small and experiment. With a new technology and something as unpredictable as fundraising, you can't plan in a traditional sense. So experiments are your friends. Lastly, to do this, you need your data foundations to be in place, which is part of what we're about to get to now. But data is fundamental to making AI work, so it's something that can't be ignored as we're thinking about the good things that AI might be able to deliver for us. With that, I will hand across to Lisa to talk us through the slightly less good things.
Thank you. Yep, it can't all be perfect, and we did want to try and give you the full picture today of how AI will impact fundraising, and there are some downsides to cover. The downsides are broadly in two classes. So you've got things that you'll need to respond to, so stuff that's not in your organization's direct control, such as challenging channels and increasing expectations of consumers. Whilst there are things that are in your organization's direct control, like the fact we frequently hear from people saying they're drowning in data and they're not sure how they can get their team to engage with learning and development for these new tools. So first up, if we have a look at challenging channels, this is the difficulty that AI creates for you to reach your audience, including reduced reach, control over content distribution, and increased competition. And this annoyingly comes on top of the challenge like platforms including Instagram, Facebook, and X, making it harder to reach all of your followers while paid media continues to get more and more expensive. One of the challenges here is the fear that AI reduces the amount of organic traffic arriving on sites. Google AI Overviews is the big one here, but emerging AI engines like Perplexity or Arc Search are also part of the puzzle. And the question is, if a person can get their answer from AI without visiting your website, how do you build a relationship with them? I've also got a good blog to send after on Google AI Overviews as well, so I'll include that in the follow-up email. But we have two examples of how we can help. So it's not all bad. The first example is for our work with Breast Cancer Now. This time we're looking at their What We'll See campaign. So the campaign launched after they merged with Breast Cancer Care to highlight the charity's vision for 2050. So we ran a multi-channel digital marketing campaign to spread awareness of the new charity. And the slide here shows two social media posts from the campaign. The first post features a woman with the word hope written over the image. image, and the second post features a pink texture with the word fear written over it. And the campaign reached 1.2 million people, over 25,000 new users to Breast Cancer Now's website, and 445,000 post engagements. So we're showing this case study to show that the basics of good campaigns doesn't change, and using surprise and getting attention across multiple channels enables messages to get to your audience, even with social media distribution challenges. The second example is to use owned channels like email. So the charity world is still lagging behind the commercial world a bit in fully taking advantage of email. So we designed and ran a lead generation campaign on Facebook and Instagram to grow Islamic Relief UK's email list. And we developed an effective email welcome journey for new subscribers, which actually successfully matched donation rates from long-term supporters. And we also integrated the email platform with Islamic Relief UK's Meta account, automating the process of leads without manual data uploads. So while it's not easy, there are ways of navigating the challenge of changing channels. I will now hand over to Ed to talk about increasing expectations.
Great stuff. Thanks, Lisa. Yes, so unfortunately, attitudes are not fixed. Collective expectations go up every time there's a breakthrough. And AI is one of those breakthroughs. And I've got a slightly outside-in example of how this is coming through, looking at fast fashion. And not going to mince words, fast fashion is not doing good things for the planet, right? But they have dramatically, or it has, as a concept, dramatically changed how people think about relationships. And it's all based around AI. So Zara still is a massive player here, but they used to be the top of the mountain, as it were. And they changed fashion by having small factories near to their stores, and they were able to iterate really quickly to have new styles in their stores after only 15 days. So over the course of a year, Zara might be able to get 20,000 garment styles through the door. Now, Shein is a new player who leans very, very heavily on AI. And last year they had 1.3 million styles for sale. So that's a 65 times increase on what Zara is able to do. And this is relevant for us when we're thinking about donations, because the people who are donating to charities are buying from Shein, from Zara, from Nike, and other consumer brands. And the experience that they are receiving from them, the sense of plurality, of opportunity, of different options, informs the way they expect to relate to other organizations, including nonprofits. So this is very much early days for charities in responding to this sort of consumer behavior. Lisa mentioned at the top of the call that this webinar was inspired by something that we did with the Oxfam global fundraising team. And with this, we were looking at the opportunities that AI can present. Where are the possible areas of change that you as an organization can lean into and take advantage of? Let me hand back to Lisa, who can talk about data foundations.
Yes, data. This is the one we hear about a lot, and you're hearing about quite a lot today as well. So there is a sense that we're swimming in oceans of data, but for many, it's not clear how to take advantage of it. And this is a massive barrier to using artificial intelligence to make life better. We could dedicate a whole webinar to talking about data structures. And actually, Ed, I think maybe we should do a whole webinar on data structures. But in our experience, there are three varieties of barriers. So the first is the silo effect. So data is stuck between different bits of an organization. So it might be in fundraising, digital, IT, and others. And that silo effect also occurs between different tools. So the CRM has some data, the website others, the fundraising platform some, and et cetera, et cetera. The second variety of barrier is uncertainty about whether data can be used. And this is a really large risk for any organization, but reputationally is perhaps even more important for charities to get right. And the third barrier is lack of structure. So unstructured and hard to manipulate data is very hard to use. To get data to do good for your charity requires a program to create structured and manipulable data. But we can help. again. So over the past 24 years of Torchbox, we have worked on a lot of data problems. So it's very hard to just choose one, but we landed on Upshot. So the Upshot system started in 2012 inside the Football Foundation to enable volunteers to record pitch conditions, participation levels, and other vital monitoring and evaluation data for community sports groups. And it revolutionized how organizations manage community sports projects by simplifying data capture and tracking the impact of 400 million in grants. And today, more than 1,400 organizations across sectors and countries are using Upshot. And these include funders, foundations, governing bodies, public sector organizations, and charities in any shape or form. So with intuitive dashboards and tools, their data must be structured, reliable, and cross-functional, just as systems need to be to support AI. Okay, Ed, talk to us now about new learning tools.
Perfect. Learning learning new tools is not straightforward. It requires time and space, but most importantly, it requires change. And all change, even in business situations, is emotional. Processes and tools are not neutral. We grow attached to the ways we have always done things. So change, regardless of whether it's artificial intelligence or not, it's just an essential part of our world, right? And as this slightly intense quote from Alvin Toffler lays out, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And the bit that I think Toffler misses here is that this is as true at an organizational level as it is at an individual level. That's a tongue twister. Feel like we've been giving ourselves lots of tongue twisters with this one. And again, we've been doing lots of work here. We've been doing, I think, in terms of proportion, almost the majority of our work supporting people on their journey with AI, supporting how that introduces change to their organization. So this is an example with Kelp Network, who are a nonprofit working with cash and voucher assistance in disaster zones. And we worked through the cultural and learning challenges that AI might create in order to generate guidelines and principles for them to adapt to this technological change. So again, to recap, to get ahead of any downsides that AI might create for your organization, there are a couple of things that we need to be engaging with. There are those things that are outside your control that as an organization you need to respond to. So challenging channels and increasing expectations. And there are those that are within your control to start changing. So figuring out a data strategy so you're not being drowned by data, and then supporting your teams, learning new tools and processes to take advantage of the new tools that we have available to us. And with that, we have some time to take questions.
Yeah, so we've got one in the Q&A. If you've got any questions, you can put them in the chat now as well if you'd like to, so pop them in. So David has asked, are there any sources you recommend for finding case studies and info on tools available?
I don't think there's a one-stop shop, unfortunately. If someone else knows of one, please put it in the chat. As a team, we go around various tech blogs, various spaces. So the obvious ones are The Verge, TechCrunch, Hacker News. Those sorts of spaces tend to have pretty good, up-to-date information about new things that are either coming onto the market or have happened in terms of case studies about successes. Some of the Anthropic, OpenAI, and the other big players quite often publish case studies themselves about the success that they've seen. That's very specific to generative AI. But yeah, it's one of those ones where you sort of have to browse around the internet and you can find stuff.
Thank you. And another one on tools. So Seb has asked, what tool do you see as the most helpful to fundraisers and the one thing we need to be most concerned about avoiding, and why?
That's a good question. I'm only allowed one tool. We're only allowed one tool. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat and say I feel like adaptability is probably the most useful tool. I think that's because things are changing very often. It wasn't in today's webinar, but in quite a lot of the webinars or quite a lot of the presentations I do, there's a chart showing the big generative AI models that are on the market, and pretty much every week I have to update it because something has changed, right? The capabilities have changed. There's a new player, etc., etc. So I think being adaptable is really important. To give a slightly more direct response, we're finding, if there's just one off-the-shelf thing to take, Claude for individual contributors, so the large language model that Anthropic offers is at the moment the market leader and is very, very useful in day-to-day work. The thing to be most concerned about and avoid, I think, is some of the organizations we're talking with or have spoken with have been very risk averse. And I think that's a challenge because it means that there aren't those guidelines or policies that enable people within the organization to start exploring this new technology. And I think that what that tends towards is having shadow IT within organizations. So people are kind of, they're using their phones or they're using a free version of a tool to try and get it. So I think not exploring, not experimenting is the thing to avoid at the moment, which is a weird double negative, but I think it's really important to be experimenting and exploring right now.
Thank you. And we did host another webinar on platforms and tools as well, which I'll also share, Seb, which had some more details about what each one is quite good for as well. We had a question: if you were working with a charity for the first time and they had no AI integration at all, what would you start with? Cleaning up and structuring their data? Question mark.
I think, I think I'd start with the why, or I think we would start with the why, right? Why might we need an AI integration? I think there is a challenge that fundraisers have, or people generally have in charities, where they might have the C-suite or the trustees say, "Oh, this AI thing's a really big deal." It is a really big deal, but they're kind of insisting that people deal with it right now, and they just need something that's got AI into it. But there needs to be a need, right? There needs to be a problem that can be solved with it. So I think the starting point would be the why. What's the need? What are we trying to figure out? And then from there, it'll become clear about whether it's about data, whether it's about creating an API, whether it's about learning, etc., etc. It could be a myriad number of things.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So it was quite a whistle-stop tour, but we hope it's given you some inspiration and food for thought for your fundraising. I think that's all the questions for now. I also just wanted to mention that we're hosting an event with Digital in London. So if any of you are London-based, it's on the 11th of July, and it'll be a breakfast event all on omni-channel fundraising, which I think will be really interesting. So it will cover how you deal with all these channels, and with Digital, so it'll be about email as well, and it's an in-person breakfast. So if any of you are London-based and you'd like to come along, then let me know and I will send you an invite because there are limited spaces. But I think that's it. So thank you very much, Ed, for all of your time. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Great to have you all here. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.